I don't believe that building blocks are physical or non-physical. I think they have to somehow be both.
Everything that is just a permeable web that is constantly unfolding and like twisting and move, almost like the structure of DNA, where it's like it's like turning over itself, and it's like a gyre, basically. Yeah.
That's it. You read my mind. To draw that back to art, to collapse possibilities around creating something quote unquote physical, or at least like actualizing something in space and time, is singularly creating something out of this schism that feels fractured in a way, right? Why do I'm like constantly dancing when I'm talking? Like, we're busting philosophy out of the old stuffy lecture hall and setting it loose on the world of creativity. Join us as we explore the unwritten aesthetic.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. And how do you say welcome back in German?
Willkommen zurück.
Willkommen zurück.
Yeah, that was good.
No. Well,
no, that was great.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Unwritten Aesthetic. Lauren, as always, so lovely to see you, and
Likewise.
I have been looking forward to this conversation for
Me too.
a while. So I guess I'll tee it up for our audience real quick. I stumbled across this episode of the podcast Rune Soup, and I'm a very big fan of Rune Soup. The creator, Gordon White, is a magical practitioner and has the world's largest online magical training community.
Oh.
But I really love his work because it is so entrenched in the, you're okay, do what you need to do, but it is so entrenched in the imaginal and in the belief in spirit that I think magical practices must have, but he also has such a deference and respect for the fact that, like, there's different ways of approaching this. And actually in the episode, one thing he says is, like, does magic work because of psychology, or does psychology work because of magic? And based on how someone answers that, you kind of understand the worldview they're working from. But I think to even frame that question is to have an understanding that we're kind of talking about the same thing here, right? Like, we're operating in the same realm of the liminal between the imaginal and the real. And I just really appreciate that approach. And almost all of the podcast episodes of Rune Soup that I've listened to, I have been just kind of floored by the content of. And I stumbled across this one and I was like, ooh, art as evocation, this seems like a Lauren and I kind of topic. And listening to it, within the first 10 minutes, I was like, I need to hear Lauren's thoughts on this.
Same.
Immediately.
No, because I think I started listening to it, and like not even 15 minutes in, I was already like 3 pages of notes deep. Like some were like, oh yeah, and others more like, wait a minute, guys, what are we doing? But yeah, so I'm super excited for this conversation because it really was a good springboard for a lot of I think it did a really good job of bringing out some of my, like, some more articulate questions and doubts that I have about sort of like on the spectrum of like philosophy and psychology and magic and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like when stuff starts to lean more towards the esoteric, how skeptical I get, which is surprising because I did used to be really into like celestial magic and that kind of stuff. And it's kind of made me realize how much my beliefs and my views have departed from that over time.
Yeah.
Still in a respectful way, and like you said, I think the podcast does such a good job of that, like in a way where you don't have to believe in like you don't have to practice or believe in magic like in the traditional sense of like, oh no, it's not psychology, like this is its own sort of mystical force. You don't have to believe
Right.
in that to gain a lot of really valuable insights and
Yeah.
questions from the podcast. It's the only episode of it that I've ever watched, but I got that impression from it as well.
Yeah. And I think I really love with what you said too, the way that like the definition of magic is so fluid as well, that like you said, when you hear the word magic, you can get so entrenched in like either the kind of Fantasia Mickey Mouse with the wizard hat
Mm-hmm.
magic that you think of, or the witch in the woods with a wand and a broom and a huge
Hell yeah.
scary nose that's like spooky and dark and cauldron and magic, right? And
Yeah,
the way
broomstick.
that they all the way that they all speak about it is more just about like in a Jungian sense, kind of collective unconscious, or in a even like Platonic sense, what is the like Platonic ideal kind of exists in a
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote magical realm. So going
Yeah.
into it, I guess just prefacing that like the way we're going to be using the word magic is not the way you probably have a preconceived notion of. And I think same thing with art in this conversation. Before we dive into our actual thoughts, I also want to say, so the host of the podcast is Gordon White, but in this episode, he's interviewing Phil Ford and J.F. Martel, who have a podcast themselves, I believe, called Weird Studies. So that's our three thinkers that we are discussing today. And of course, this episode will be linked down below for you to listen to yourselves. We highly recommend you do. And thank you to these three gentlemen for having this conversation. Lauren, I wanted to toss it over to you with one of the questions that I thought was the most difficult of the conversation. Does art work better when you believe in this numinous aspect of it? Or do we need to have that? Slash, do artists always inherently practice esotericism even if they don't think they are? Are they engaging in something imaginal even if they view it as a purely material practice for themselves?
Great question. What does numinous mean?
Oh, numinous is like of the like ephemeral
Oh,
space.
cool.
What's the actual?
Oh, I gotta use that more.
I really like it because to me it feels like the word, okay, numinous, having a strong spiritual quality, indicating or suggesting the presence of a divinity.
Okay, cool.
So I tend to like the word numinous more than like esoteric, because I think esoteric can be
it has a heavier connotation.
right and like linked to a certain framework or worldview, whereas to me numinous feels a little bit more there's something going on.
Yeah. Yeah,
So yeah.
that's a really good question. And I think this is something that I mean, you gave that disclaimer just now about, you know, how we will be speaking about magic and art. And I admittedly had the same sort of issue when listening to the podcast, I think, because there were many aspects of what they were discussing that align with my own artistic practice pretty directly. Like I heard language of Klee and Heidegger all throughout this. Like I can't remember at what point, but sort of this idea of an essentialization of the accidental, as Klee puts it, that this is somehow the goal or the accomplishment of art. And of course, I have this sort of mystical side of my practice as well, where it's like dwelling at the heart of Genesis, which is another Klee line.
Ooh, I love that.
Or Heidegger in GA39, he describes poetry as like the barely graspable, like barely being able to grasp the mystery. I don't know how it would translate directly into English, but sort of a grasping at this mystery.
Mm.
And so there is something very mystical and kind of amorphous about that idea, but the language of magic, describing art and the practice of art with the language of magic and evocation, I think I found somehow very disagreeable just
Mm.
because I think it's really easy to describe art as evocation. And if you're using more magical language to describe that evocative practice, it almost kind of sounds to me like when I'm painting, for example, I am like connecting to and like drawing from this force that exists outside of me, and like I'm acting as a medium basically.
Right.
And like and I just don't know if that would be the first way I'd describe it. Like, and I think that there are some issues that can come as a consequence of seeing it in that way. Of like when I'm painting, I'm acting as a medium for this like larger force that exists independently of me, or like
Right.
that's larger than me in some sense.
Yeah.
Especially when they were describing like uh a forgery, like a Rembrandt forgery,
Yeah.
and that even in like the forgery, there's some mystical force that we can sense from it, um, regardless of who the painter is. And I was like, well, it's not that, like, it's not, uh, like, despite or aside from the fact that it was painted from a particular person, that it has this mystical force. For me, it is because it was painted by this particular person that it has this sort of mystical force, and that it
Yeah.
has like a tonality to it or something like that.
Yeah.
'Cause yeah, so I think the force of a painting, what makes a painting powerful, long story short, is it has a lot to do with who painted it. I don't want to say it's like the essence of art is something like exclusively localized in the person, like the intentional agent who made it. I don't know if I would want to go that far, but there was just something about the language of it that got me kind of caught up, and it might be because I was just getting too latched on. Oh, gesundheit.
Thank you.
Um, it might have just been because I was getting too latched on to the magical language.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but those were kind of my initial thoughts.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely like a feeling that I have in this conversation too, where it's like, oh, maybe I wouldn't quite go that far, even though I do very much believe that when I'm writing or creating or engaging in art, whatever that actually means, tapping into something bigger than myself. But I think there's an importance not to overprivilege that
Mm.
instead of the like localized experience, right? I almost feel like the individual shouldn't just be a medium, and there is something about art that does um ask something of the artist, right? That it feels okay. So this is an interesting thing that's coming up for me, but like when I read tarot, I feel like my job is to try and like fade into the shadows as much as possible so that I can be a vessel for just whatever energy is flowing, right? But when I'm writing, I almost feel like I'm being called to step up to the plate.
Yeah.
You know what I
Mm.
mean? And so there
Mm-hmm.
is this different feeling in, well, actually, there is a little bit of Reese's I amness that is being put into my art in a way that's different than communing with something bigger than myself in
Yeah.
mediumship. And I think there is a distinction there that's maybe not made in this conversation.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Because, like, on the one hand, there is at least for me, the times that I feel most productive in my painting is when I tap into a specific or like a particular mood, um, or like flow state, you know? But it is still kind of a stepping up to the plate. Maybe not
Yeah.
so much as writing, because writing I feel like has to be a little bit more like the reflexive side of like human thought has to step up to the plate maybe a bit more than just no, I don't know if I'd go that far. I was gonna say like then the sort of like intuitive, just like impulsive, just acting self, but I guess it depends on what kind of thing you're writing.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing like automatic writing or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It really
Right.
exists on a spectrum, because automatic writing, I think that to me would be something closer to how I feel when I'm painting, like I've achieved like a flow state.
Right. That does feel a little bit more
like there's no hesitation. It's
Yeah.
just like pure action. But it still very much feels like it's coming from myself. It's
Yeah.
just like there's no self-doubt in the actions that I'm taking.
Yeah.
Like in each
Yeah.
brushstroke, I'm like, I'm not really thinking about it. I'm just like doing it. And
Yeah,
it's
a little
amazing
bit
when writing
more
works like that, but it hardly ever
Right.
does.
It hardly ever does.
No.
Maybe like the imperfect language of it, but it feels more like pure id as opposed to like adding any sort of ego that's like kind of questioning things as you're doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, either that or like an overflowing of ego. Like
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
cuz there are times when like it feels kind of the same, like a complete absence of ego, not literally, but you know.
Yeah.
And like the overflowing of it, where in each case is just like either it's confidence or just pure action. But usually
Right.
when you're at your most confident, you're just kind of reverting to acting just on
Yeah.
instinct or impulse, but in hopefully a smart way. Anyways,
Right.
that's kind of off topic, but yeah. I think since we're talking about writing, it might be interesting to touch on another question or concern that I had with the direction
Yeah.
of the conversation. I know they started initially talking about a movie, like a film,
Yeah,
right?
I have not
I haven't
seen
seen it.
this film. Yeah.
Me neither. But maybe actually, no, maybe I'm just kind of basing it off of my personal experience and the few examples they gave, but it did feel very visual art centric. And I'm wondering if the description of art that they were kind of suggesting as like how did they describe it? I think I wrote it down. Did I? I don't think I did. Oh, sorry. That
No, that's okay.
art is an expression of the possible.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said that.
There's
But
there's a Gordon's shamanic teacher I'm going to forget his name, but he says that shamanism takes the possible and makes it probable. I don't know if that's the portion that maybe you're pulling from, but there is something that is like expressing the possible that they're definitely touching on for sure.
Yeah, and it also in like with regards to this sort of division between truth and falsity or like deceit that they were discussing as well, and how art kind of circumvents or calls into question that divide. And as someone with an existentialist sort of leaning, I was kind of like, well, all human action is sort of like an expression of the possible, because
Yes.
everything we do actualizes one possibility while simultaneously collapsing all the other possibilities that were alternatives for the one that we actualized. And I guess this is a very broad question for you, but let's just take the idea that art is an expression of the possible. As with all human action in the sense that it actualizes one of them. But if what they're trying to say is that it expresses the possible in a way that preserves the possibility in itself, or like the sphere of possibilities,
Right.
is that what they're saying? And if so, how might that vary from one art form to the other? Like, how might a painting express the possible differently from like a symphony or like a poem? You know,
Right.
maybe that's kind of a broad question, but that's kind of the blob of thought that I'm trying to express.
No, I really hear that. I think, to speak to something you said in the beginning where it's like, isn't that all human behavior? I do think that that was ultimately my, like, not disagreement, but kind of, and also to the conversation as a whole, was like, there wasn't a lot that I inherently disagreed with in terms of the way they're thinking about it. I just always wanted to add, but it's more than just art. Or if we're talking about this definition of art, then all of human behavior is art, right? And so that was kind of my thing, which again is part of the flaw of language. And it's like, if life is your ultimate work of art, then yes, you know. But then we get into some other stuff. And with art being something that kind of captures the possible, I almost view it as this like layered thing. And I think in one sense they were trying to discuss the way that art shows possibility because it can exist beyond the quote unquote real. And so it almost acts as like a gateway into imagining something non-material. And so when they say possible, I almost interpreted it as like not as a possible additional option or choice, but as a possible, like a mode of possibilities that can exist in a form that is both representational and also something in and of itself. However, I do think that by creating a work of art, exactly like you just said, in this very real lived sense, you are eliminating out all other possibilities. Like, well, now there is no possibility except for the fact that you made this work of art. It almost makes me think of like the timeline jumping thing that's kind of talked about in a lot of different timeline stuff, but I think an actually really great modern description of this is in the Loki TV series, where they're talking about different possible timelines. And it's like, you have all of these options available to you, but as soon as you choose to go down one timeline, those other options cannot happen anymore for you as an individual. It's like they fade away, and they may exist, but it also may like crop up another, depending on your belief system around dimensions, like timeline in another version of you that does make that choice. But it's like, in this timeline, in this version of you, you made this work of art. Does that work of art now open up an infinite number of possibilities beyond it? Perhaps, perchance, but that's almost I don't know if I would say like secondary or tertiary, but it feels like an additional layer to the choice of self. Like this choice that I made to make this art. It's like, okay, now that I've created this, have I introduced more possibility, even though I've collapsed other possibilities for me? I would like to think so. I think maybe, but at the same time, like I do think that in some way that is what I think good art kind of does. It opens up possibilities. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question in a thorough way, but yeah, what do you think about this? I think that's a really fascinating question.
No, I think you brought up a really good point, and it reminded me of our discussion quite a few episodes back with the tetelestai. Like, it is finished.
Oh, yeah.
Like, but the verb form itself implies, like, a finished action with ongoing consequences.
Yes.
And
yes.
that was it just how you described, like, art being a possibility that is actualized, and in so doing, a collapsing of all the other possibilities of, you know, how that art form could have ended up. But it opens up, like, a secondary or tertiary sphere of possibilities, in virtue of being, like, a completed thing.
Right. It is kind of paradoxical in the sense that it is like, in trying to honor possibilities, it still collapses them, but
It has
to. It has to. Right.
Yeah, because otherwise,
Yeah.
like, it would just... What would be the alternative? Like, an art form that preserves the sphere of possibility as a whole would not exist. You'd never actually make an art form, and that in itself would be a possibility that you have collapsed into an actuality. You've chosen to not complete the art piece, to not even start it, maybe, in order to preserve that sphere of possibilities. And hey,
then,
there's a lot of art projects I have that are in that that are in that stage.
Let's be fair. I think all artists have that, but I don't think any of us. Which maybe this is the next question for those art projects. I'm like, I don't consider those art yet. Like, well, I don't know. I say that, and then I'm like, wait, do I? But like, at what stage? Because a part of me is like, well, they're not finished works of art, but they're like ongoing projects. But even if something is just an idea that nothing has like been actualized around at all, like no notes, no research, no nothing, does that still make it art in some sense? And if so, it feels less quote unquote valid as a work of art. And therefore, I would almost say, like, if we're working to develop a definition of art that we like, does like actualization in the real bear some requirement? Like, is that part of what makes art?
I would say so.
I don't think just an idea that exists in my head is an art piece, you know?
It might be an artistic idea. But at least and having like a univocal? Yeah. Definition of art. I don't know if that's a word, but I think it is. A univocal definition of art. It's a tricky subject, but based on my first like impulse, I would say yes. Like, a work of art is something that goes beyond or transcends just like the limits of who I am. But I don't know, there's so many fringe cases, and that's like how every definition given for a work of art works. Like, it's really difficult because art is there's so many myriad forms that works of art can take. Like, the Da Vinci piece, the unfinished Da Vinci painting that we saw at the Uffizi. Like, that felt like a work of art, and actually seeing it unfinished to me felt more powerful than if it were to be finished. Possibly because it did sort of bring to bear the intentional human action behind it. And then it's like, oh, this I'm seeing the artist, I'm seeing the process of him collapsing the sphere of possibilities, which with every choice that he's making in this piece. And that was like really powerful and exciting to see. Yeah. Versus if it was just a little finished picture.
So in that sense, okay, I have like a twofold question on that, because I agree with you. There's also this complication in that for me that is, well, choosing to not finish a piece is still a way to finish it, in a sense that it's like, well, you're still actualizing it and you're still collapsing all possibility. However, I think he died before it was finished. Yeah. So that's the other thing, is like, where does choice come into it, where it's like, well, is it finished because it can no longer be worked on by the artist? And is it truly finished and actualized in that way, or does there require some choice of like, I am leaving this unfinished as a finished
I am leaving
piece.
this realm of existence.
Yeah. I am leaving this realm. Which
Yeah.
I do think too, another thing that like, this is a little tangential to the question I just asked, but I think also hearing your earlier definition, one thing that occurred to me that I just kind of want to note is like, when we're defining art, I think ultimately, because it relies upon the artist, it will also always collapse back into relying on a definition of the self, which I think gets really hard in a certain sense.
It does. Yeah.
I'll just kind of underline that as like a, but
No, I agree with you. Yeah. Sorry,
but then also, no, that was just like a, but would also like to know your thoughts on this like choice piece then with collapsing possibility.
I think since it's on my brain, the furthest it's as close to the front of my brain as whatever. I would like to address the question of the self first.
Oh yeah. Go for it.
Because I had the same question as well, because I was thinking back to the AI art conversation and how in the process of writing my paper on that, I came across like the various definitions that scholars have offered for a work of art that are either able to take AI art into account as valid works of art or exclude them. And the main, I guess, determining factor there is whether or not these scholars want to include human intentionality or human agency into their definition of what constitutes a work of art or not. And, AI art now, it's like, it's gonna get better.
Yeah.
And like I don't remember the specific piece, but there's tons like made in the style of Van Gogh. And some of them you would look at and think like, oh, I've never seen this work from Van Gogh before, And so they kind of carry that same evocative force that a Van Gogh painting would carry. But obviously there was no human agent behind it other than the one who who prompted the generated image or who like programmed it. But I think this is really tricky, and I don't really know where I'm settled on this, but I may be biased, but I can't help but feel like art is what it is in part because it's like us grappling with, or even just seeing stuff and being like, oh, I want to recreate this,
Yeah.
Like, part of what's powerful about art to me is that it's like a physical manifestation of this grappling with meaning that we as humans do, and AI can definitely mimic that. But AI art to me is like, it's the same sort of thing as a master copy, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, still a little bit different, because then it's like, oh, that's someone trying to like, really hone in on their craft and on their skills, and to recreate a technique of like one of the old masters and see what they can take into their own practice from that.
Right.
If you're just selling master copies, I'm sorry, that's not art. I've said it again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. That's one of my hot takes.
No, I think is that a hot take actually in the art community, that
I don't
master
know.
copies
I feel like it's a little bit insensitive, because obviously to like perfectly recreate the Mona Lisa
it takes skill.
That's a skill. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have that skill, So it's like, it's respectful in that way, but for me it just feels more like like a magic, like an illusion. I don't know. Not an illusion, but yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, not to necessarily derail where we're going, but like a deceit in a way. I don't know if you
A
would.
little bit.
But that
A little
almost doesn't
bit.
feel right either, because it's like,
it's sort of just profiting off of the evocative force that this original painting had.
Right.
And, like, people can't have the original for whatever reason, so
Which
here's the
to
master
me,
copy. Like, people
you
that
can
sell master
question.
copies, I'm like,
Yeah. I think
I don't know.
it's like if there's a market for it and people want to spend money on it and there's people who enjoy doing that, like cool. I think you can debate the morality of it on one hand, but then there's the different question of like, but is it art? And I think based on our univocal definition, we would probably say no because of how it like, you know what? Maybe this is the piece for me that feels like why it's not art, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. Is that because there is no artist of the person who's actually painting it put into it, right?
Yeah, I
It's
think
like,
so. Like, it is a technical skill, and
yes,
they're definitely putting that into it, and, like, that's commendable. But that
right.
it's sort of just a technical, like, it's a technical skill. It's like a mechanical reproduction. But again, that is kind of a side topic, and my motivation in bringing this up was
Yeah.
more so in, like, trying to understand it through the lens, or like through the perspective that they offered in the podcast, of like which pieces of art have sort of this mystical force behind them and
Mm-hmm.
which ones don't. I feel like it can't really be something you exclusively determine in terms of who painted it, like the who
Right.
of the work of art, and it's not something you can exclusively determine by the subject matter or the motif of the artwork, because people will have different interpretations of it, and aesthetic judgments are very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, the easy answer, I guess, if you're like, well, all of these factors, like, there's too many fringe cases to give us that one answer. Maybe it's just a mystical power that's bigger than us, and that's what we're tapping into. And maybe some artists tap into it more than others. But again, I don't know if that's how far they're trying to go with it. I mean, the host of the podcast is like, he practices magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he probably
Yeah.
does really, he probably is really talking about it in like this strong sense of like mystical, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think that their argument, the way I hear their argument, is that it is this almost every work of art transcends the material. It at bare minimum, I think I feel comfortable saying is part of their argument. However, I do think that there is this piece that is still like uh how do I want to describe this? Like for a really long time in like esoteric psychology, like since young, there has been this like, oh, well, when people encounter spirits or when people engage with their spirit guides or whatever that looks like, we can actually just understand those in this archetypal or even like parts work sense as a piece of the self, as a piece of the unconscious. So it's like, there is a way to root all of these mystical experiences back into how we understand the human being. And that has been a kind of Western esoteric tradition, like post-Jung in the last few hundred years. But I think one thing that Gordon White, the host of the podcast, really tries to do is say, but there's actually something more than that too. There is something more than just psychology happening, but why can't that also be happening? Like, to me, to speak back to the question of like, do you think magic works because of psychology, or does psychology work because of magic? I would say yes, right?
Yeah.
Which isn't really satisfying, but I think that and I don't know, I really want to interview Gordon. Actually, I'm like, honestly, one of my dream
Oh,
making
wait,
meeting
we should
guests.
do that.
Right?
Oh, yeah, for
I'm
making
like,
meetings. That'd
but
be good.
also for this, like, that would be sick. So
That would
I'm
be
like,
really cool.
I want to ask him these questions.
We should
but
do
I do
guests.
think
That would be
we
so
should.
fun.
Hey, anyone out there, if you want to be a guest, hit us up on Instagram or
Absolutely.
email. All
Let's
of
have a
the
fun
emails are always
convo.
in the description. But I think for me personally, I fall in the it has to be both based on what we're talking about. But I would like to think that Gordon does too. But I think that, like you said, he may fall more in the magic is the fundamental reality that is generating these things. Like, there is something bigger than us that is some sort of truth more than just this. And to me, it's very both and. But again, that's just me assuming and considering his worldview. But I do think that it's like there is something to the like. It has to be more than just our psychology because of the like it almost gets into the materialism and Cartesian dualism of it all too, right?
Yeah. Well, one, a clarification question, and then two, a follow-up question for you. But are you saying that when they say that art somehow goes beyond the real or goes beyond like the material, is that sort of what you're interpreting them to mean as like, oh, it's not purely like psychological?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was just a clarification question.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think from a completely different perspective, I would also say it's both.
Yeah.
Both. Both. Oops. But I'd be curious to hear you kind of tease out that intuition more.
Yeah.
Because
So
it's tricky.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think so. To me, it very much relies on my philosophy of mind and of my personal metaphysics. So where I am right now with those is that the human being has to be a site of both material and non-material things. I am not a panpsychist. I am not a...
This is like me like, I'm not a Heideggerian. Right. I am. Sorry.
Me, a Heideggerian.
I'm
away. Not a Heideggerian. Lock me up.
Lock me up. No, okay. But you're not a panpsychist.
Because I don't think that... And I'm not a materialist either. I'm not a non-materialist and I'm not a materialist. And I think that in philosophy of mind and metaphysics that, like panpsychism, are trying to come up with something to make non-material things make sense in our material world, oftentimes fall into the same flaw of materialism, just inversed. So for me, I think if we're drilling down to the fundamental nature of reality, I think there has to be some building block that is both material and non-material. And how is that possible? I think this is like, I've been doing a lot of self-research into quantum physics and stuff to try and understand what this actually could be and look like. But I do think that fundamentally there is something special about human consciousness that is the closest way that we can experience this, right? It's like if we can only prove our subjective experience, and our subjective experience both deals in all of this imaginal stuff, like feelings and emotions and thought processes and the internal monologue that we're constantly going through and the feeling of being awake versus dreaming, like all of these non-material things. Plus, I'm a physical human being with a body and a brain and psychology and DNA. So I, therefore, as a human being, have to be the site of both of those things.
Yes.
So if we have a building block that leads to both of those things, the building block has to be both. I don't really know how that works, but to then answer your question on like this, it's both magic and psychology, I think it's kind of that too, where to me, psychology is at the end of the day, a science that is descriptive about the human brain and ways that the human brain gives rise to experience. But psychology only deals in materialism, even though there are ways that there are other practices like therapy and cognitive behavioral processes and all sorts of stuff that expand outward, of course. It is a material science. Magic, on the other hand, and so to me, psychology uses a physical building block. Magic, on the other hand, is describing things that uses a non-material building block. Therefore, because I don't believe that building blocks are physical or non-physical, I think they have to somehow be both. I think that what we call psychology is magical in a certain sense, that like some electrical impulse can happen in my brain and then I see red, like that feels magical. And but also when I experience something that feels really magical, like seeing a butterfly, or this is a better example, like hearing my grandma's favorite song right after I was just thinking about her, right? It's like that feels magical and improbable, but also I can understand how that could be coincidence and there could be some sort of psychological process that's making that feel like more than it actually is. Or even if it's not coincidence, like some sort of energetic energy that I'm putting out into the universe that is then causing some butterfly effect ripple happening in the quantum field that we don't see or understand right now that could theoretically be material, causing that to happen, right? I think it's kind of both of these things.
Yeah.
Am I feel like I sound like a crazy person.
Reese, no, you don't. You don't at all. And like, I'm sure there are people like listening to this, and it's really hard to talk about this stuff without sounding a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But I 100%, well, maybe not 100, like 97%.
Sure.
You know, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I do understand what you're saying. And I'm getting like excited about it because this is something that I have been writing about, I guess, as a sort of like fragmentary, I don't know, like it was going to be one of my term papers, but it's too broad. So I think it'll just be a thesis stuff maybe. I'll just push that problem into next semester.
Right.
But I do agree with you that it has to be both. I do think it's interesting that you set it up as like material and non-material. By the way, love the description of the human being as the site of both of these things. I would agree. I think I would describe these two poles in a different way. I saw, this is going to be a big tangent, but I promise it's relevant.
No, I love it.
I went and I saw this really cool art installation called Origins. And it was like it was mostly like projectors, but it was like an immersive art installation, kind of reimagining in a very non-scientific way, like early microbial life and like the beginning of the universe and that kind of thing. And maybe that's not relevant, but the way they portrayed it kind of inspired this reflecting on how things work and in trying to preserve the experience duality of human existence, which is like it's it's schismatic. Is that the word I'm looking for? It's not dualistic necessarily, but every like, you know, it's a sort of separation from, you know, like every determination is negation sort of thing.
Right.
But like trying to find a philosophy that preserves the experience duality of human existence while not reverting back into Cartesian dualism or like the idea of the metaphysical or biological subject as the fundamental grounds of intelligibility, the basic basement layer of this sort of lived experience.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been in my concussed state of mind, which has mostly, I think I'm not concussed anymore, but
Woohoo!
woohoo! I think I've been like
Summer
reverting.
party!
Summer party! No
Sorry.
concussion!
Sorry. So sorry.
No, that was a good throwback. But I've been trying to like draw it out, because sometimes I'm like, yeah, maybe my thoughts are fragmented right now. Let me just draw a picture because this works so much better. But I think the way I am enjoying thinking about it and describing it lately is like everything that is just a permeable web that is constantly unfolding and like twisting and move, almost like the structure of DNA, where it's like it's like turning over itself, and it's like a gyre basically. Yeah.
That's it. You read my mind.
No, it is. It moves like a gyre. And in this permeable web, there are moments of coalescence. And what is responsible, what allows things, distinct things, to coalesce in the permeable web, it's some sort of fundamental oppositional force. Not like a substance dualism, but just in the most abstract sense that you can possibly imagine. There is a fundamental oppositional force that, like, in the same way that when you have, like, two magnets, like, if these are, like, two magnets, and you hold the, like, two like poles together, it creates sort of, like, a magnetic field in the middle, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
terrible drawing.
Yeah.
But here, this is a better drawing. Like that.
Yeah. Love.
And that's sort of the clearing, to use a Heideggerian term, in which meaning can unfold. Like the thing that holds open this space for any, like basically the unity of experience is not like a homogeneous pool of stuff, but is something that is constituted from some sort of oppositional force. And I'm not entirely clear, it's not clear to me if this oppositional force is human consciousness itself, or if there's some other sort of opposition that prompts us to have this sort of schismatic experience of the world. But
Yeah.
like, I think it's very possible to, like, just because it's two or more doesn't mean it's dualism all the time.
Right.
Because it's not, I don't know, like, there's this, in a sense, a soup of things, but it's a permeable web, and it's constantly in motion, it's constantly in flux, and things coalesce in that.
Yeah. I really like the word.
Now we're sounding crazy.
No, see, and now I'm like, not at all. I really love the, because what I thought you were going to describe was, like these oppositional forces and attractive forces that kind of create an expansion and contraction. Like we've kind of talked about before in the past with, like if all of life points to one thing, what is that thing? But then that thing also points back at everything else, right? And it's going in both directions at the same time. But I think breaking it down to actually the site of what is expanding and contracting, and thinking about that as an oppositional force, is so powerful, because to me, pairing that with the clearing, right? It's like these two like forces that can't come together. And if you actually were to push them together,
there would be no clearing.
Mm-hmm. And the image that's coming to mind right now is the way that scientists kind of describe the Big Bang, which obviously there's so many more theories around now than the way laymen kind of discuss it. But it's like, to create a clearing, like on this very grand scale of expansion, it is all these like forces combining. So I suppose the clarifying question that I have is, when you imagine these, because you said you find the way I'm describing these poles as material and non-material interesting, do you view the two, to use the magnet analogy, these two magnets coming together with the, because they're like forces that create the opposition, which is interesting, but
Yeah,
maybe that's...
I mean, I wrote next to this, I said, what did I say? Disregard, for the sake of the analogy, the fact that this sort of field is generated by like poles, not opposites.
Right,
But,
right.
it's not, but yeah, sorry, what's the question?
Well, no, but because
but it
I
is
think...
important to think about.
Right. I wonder if there's a... Do you view, like, these are the two different poles coming together that's creating that clearing? Because I can also imagine a sense where there's two poles here, like there's both on both sides coming together and that creating the clearing. That what if they actually were, like, what if they were mirror images of each other? That's what if, does that make sense? How do you, so all that to say, what do you conceptualize the poles as? And
Yeah, well,
are they truly different on both sides as these, which it's also hard because I think inherently we're trying to like resist dualism, but to talk about this, we kind of are like, it's hard not to be like the two poles, right? So
I think
all of that.
I mean, maybe another digression, but just kind of where my mind went. I think
Totally.
maybe to clarify with like another analogy, like when I was at this art installation and they were like, there was like, it was so cool. I wish I could, maybe I can find a clip of it online or something.
Yeah.
But it just kind of made me think like all of life is just this constant, like unceasing, unfolding, overturning genesis and decay constantly.
Yeah.
And if we weren't here, like that would just go on. I mean, it does go on, but I feel like there are many aspects of being human that are kind of an attempt to stop this, like to stop this ongoing unfolding and to conceptualize it and rationalize it. And of course we have to, because otherwise what would we do all day? Nothing. I mean, it's just like it's a feature, not a bug, you know? So I don't want to cast it in a negative light because it does characterize like the core of what it means to be human. It's like trying to make sense of all this.
Yeah.
But then I was kind of confusing myself because I'm like, well, this constant like unfolding, it's not just like a, you know, like Yeats's Geyer, it's like going in two directions.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like when your fingers like intertwine almost, but yeah, or like a double helix or something like that. And at least in terms of like the way we try to conceptualize and rationalize things and like compartmentalize this permeable web unfolding, described in that way, it would make sense to say, okay, well then we are the site of the oppositional force. But that seems somehow wrong to me because even prior to that, even like prior to any concept or any rationalization or anything, there would still, this space would still have to be held open for us to make meaning of anything, like on the most basic level, and to understand ourselves as like standing in this clearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, I'm like, there's also nothing outside of this, like, what do you call it? Like a magnetic field. There's nothing outside of it, like, beyond the analogy. Like, we can't go outside of it. We're just in the clearing.
Right.
So maybe I don't really know what I'm trying to do with this way of thinking about things. I don't think I'm trying to understand like the origins of everything, but I do think there's something really important about like there's something fundamentally oppositional or like confrontational about being human that I think philosophical or psychological, whatever, attempts to overcome Cartesian dualism often cast aside or can't account for in virtue of being so afraid to sound like Descartes in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote this down, like this was from a reading group. I don't remember who said it, but just know that I'm not the one who came up with this. But somebody wrote, like, something, a metaphysical betrayal of an essential belonging together. And I think, like, materialism is this sort of betrayal, Cartesianism is this sort of betrayal, panpsychism is this kind of betrayal.
Yeah.
Like to belong together, it has to be two or more, you know, like,
Yeah.
but to belong together, even in the most fundamental sense, requires that the things that belong together have
Are
to
singular in and of themselves.
yeah, or at least hold on to like what is distinctly themselves. Because if they just blended together, it would just be a ubiquitous soup.
Yes.
Or like a chowder. Or smoothie.
Yes.
Or like a
Chowder.
stock. More like a stock.
Or like a stock. I love that. No, I completely agree. And I think that this is almost to tie it back to this like definition of the self question within defining like art and the artist. Kind of what I've come to is that like we have all these different words to describe this like yearning for togetherness or wholeness ultimately, right? Like, or the piece of us that yearns for that, which is like soul, spark, consciousness, mind, chi, DNA, right? Like this kind of primordial stock that exists within all of us. Like there's a little drop of stock within all of us. But also, as we've talked about before, we are inherently subjective, singular human beings experiencing this subjectively.
Mm-hmm.
And we must have that in order to yearn for togetherness. And if we were to merge in togetherness, we would be whole. And yet, singular at the same time.
Yeah.
And we are kind of, in a fractal sense, singular depictions of that wholeness, which gets to the very, like, fingertips of God's consciousness piece. And to me, that's the, like, paradox of the self that is, how can I be singular and yet so deeply everything at the same time?
Yeah.
And I think that is the paradox of selfhood that is the human condition, exactly like you're talking about, right? This kind of the schismatic understanding, I love that word, of the tension of all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think to draw that back to art and this kind of question of like evocation, it's like to collapse possibilities around creating something quote unquote physical, or at least like actualizing something in space and time, is singularly creating something out of this schism that feels fractured in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like, why do
No,
I'm
sorry.
like constantly dancing when I'm talking? Like
a fractal schism
like actually
of two or more.
If you're listening,
if
you're listening on Spotify, hop over to YouTube to see my really cool interpretive dancing of
I'm sorry, I wasn't making fun of you. I was just enthusiastic about your expressiveness.
It deserves making fun of. It looks silly.
No. I thought it was really cool.
Thanks. But it also makes me think of like there's something so fundamental to like cellular biology and the way that we learn about like meiosis and mitosis being something singular that then like splits and splits and splits and splits,
Mhm.
but it's still all the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, and we know that that mirrors the Big Bang, like the origin.
It's like making soup dumplings out of the stock.
Yes. No, like actually, yes. And that we know that that's like Genesis, which goes all the way back to what you quoted Clee saying at the very beginning of this conversation.
Mhm.
It is dwelling at the heart of Genesis.
Yeah.
And like, isn't that what the artist is doing? I actually just wrote something about this that was also in this philosophy of mind stuff. I've also been studying a lot of animism because a lot of our like materialist and dualist way of thinking has only been around for like the last 300 years. In most of human history, we have not had that view, that materialism is just what we work for. And so I'm like, okay, why did that shift happen and what can we learn from like ancestral ways of thinking? And oh my God, what was I going to say? Oh, but in the idea of like the creation myth, right? We had a question about why we were here and how we were created. So we created a story. We stepped into art. We stepped into the mode of the creator. So when we create something, we literally mimicked the God that we created through creation itself, right? And is that not kind of what art still is when we're creating actualized things? Like Clee says, it's dwelling at the heart of Genesis. And what is Genesis if not mimicking God? But we created God through creation. In a more, of course, now I'm kind of being a little poetic with it.
Hey,
in this.
Go for it. You know, I love that stuff.
But I think you probably hear what I'm saying. That is this like, it once again collapses back in on itself, exactly like you're saying.
Yeah.
That is, what is Genesis if not the clearing?
Yeah. I'm going to have to think about that more. But before we leave behind this, like, oppositional force idea, I had two sort of complementary thoughts, just pattern recognition, sort of philosophizing here. But it reminded me of, like, Heidegger in Division 2 of Being in Time. Like, Dasein is always a not yet.
Yeah.
And if Dasein reaches its wholeness in death, then it's no longer Dasein, you know? So, and then also, sort of by the same token, I think this comes from Merleau-Ponty, this idea that if we could have a view from everywhere, like it would be a view from nowhere, you know? Yeah. Like if we could see a sphere from all possible angles at the same time, it would just look flat.
Yeah.
Something like that. Maybe to God, Earth is flat.
Hey,
maybe.
Have you ever thought
if
about
God
that?
If God is
have you ever thought about that?
Wait, what is it? Which one's all-knowing?
Omniscient?
Omniscient. If God is omniscient, then the Earth is flat. Sorry, that was stupid.
Name of the episode, we proved flat earthers right.
We proved it right. Through a series of poetic assumptions and presuppositions. Oh
my God, that's so funny. But I do like those pattern recognitions. And actually, one thing I was thinking about after our last conversation, because we were kind of joking about how so many of our like epiphanies, especially in high school, were just pattern recognition. In one hand, it's like, that is a little silly. But on the other hand, it's like, nature operates in pattern, right? So it's like pattern recognition in some sense is recognizing truth, like a fundamental truth that mirrors across different things. So of course, like, just recognizing patterns isn't inherently like doing philosophy, but I do think there's something really to that. And hearing you say like these patterns that you've recognized, I completely agree that like those fit in this paradigm really nicely. And I wonder if we have like always not yet, everywhere nowhere, singular whole, subjective objective. If we could also put material and non-material, or material and imaginal, right? Like we can kind of, if we wanted to dualize this multiplicitous view, kind of build up a way of reflecting this pattern that has existed through the language that other people use to talk about this.
Yeah. Like it's helpful. It's kind of like it's less confirmation bias. Hopefully, that's the thing you got to be careful for with the pattern recognition. Like it's ideally less confirmation bias and more so like seeing sort of like triangulating on like what am I trying to say, like how have other people said it, that's sort of what I want to say, but like this gets closer, but what did they miss, that kind of thing. But yeah, like with the Genesis stuff, to come back to what you said, it is sort of like we are playing God in a sense of like there's something created, but we can only really do that. Like it's a fundamental belonging together by being held apart. Like we couldn't create art if there wasn't this sort of like schismatic essence or something, a schismatic something or other. I don't want to say essence, that's too many connotations, but
so that's so funny that you say that, because I was about to say, okay, to bring it back to the spark of this conversation, is the schismatic essence in some way a way that we could conceptualize of this like quote unquote magic that our friends in the Rune Soup episode are discussing? Because it does feel bigger than the self, but also deeply self.
Yeah, like I don't know. To me, it feels bigger than the self insofar as like, yes, we are like subjective. Our experience is subjective. We are isolated subjects in a very basic, intuitive sense. I have my biological body that I have agency over. You have yours, But my subjective experience is only makes sense to me because I am born and raised in this pre-existing environment with other non-human entities and other people and a socio-historical context and like norms. So even subjectivity of our experience wouldn't really work. Like it wouldn't really be understandable to us if we weren't already in like the soup of things, if we weren't already existing within this larger
held apart state.
Yeah. But then it's like we can't be held apart unless we're already in the whole, but the whole is constituted by like an oppositional holding open. I don't really know, but it's just
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, so I guess my poorly formed answer kind of shut down the magical idea, but I guess my thing is like I don't understand. For me, my first instinct is not to describe it as something magical, although it is deeply like mysterious and enigmatic. And so like if we're talking about magic as like the enigma, then maybe I could get on board with that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too critical of magic, or maybe I'm too like biased when it comes to the word.
It is interesting to think about, right? But I think ultimately it gets back to kind of like an argument of definition in a weird sense. And I think that's why like
let's define our terms.
Right. Because to me, I would be like, and that to me feels magical. But when you say that, it's like immediately there are going to be people that are like, that's magical thinking. And like and it does turn people off. And rightly so in some contexts, because it's like, so it just like is this thing that we don't understand and whatever. And it's like, well, that's not quite what I mean. But also like we need to be careful with how we describe things. So all of that to say, I really like not to like offer my own term or whatever, but the word coherence is kind of this thing that I keep going back to with like to almost reflect this, like we have always and never, or in not yet, everywhere and nowhere, singular, subjective, whole, objective, held apart and singular, all of these different ways of describing it, and this like pole that is being held apart but still attracted to one another. To me, that tug is like existing in coherence, because that coherence is the like drop of stock that is within all of us, that is also what makes us living in coherence with one another. So all that to say, I think when we get into difficulty with terms, that's often why I think new terms get introduced, is to try and subsume other terms. That it's like, even when I sit here and I'm like, soul, chi, DNA, energy, like we have source, spirit, how many different words do we have to talk about like essence of experience or whatever? And so I think that's why I've kind of like, let's call it coherence. But then I feel like every time I'm talking to someone new, I have to define then what that is, of course.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I like coherence because to me it feels, for me it has come to mean the same, like psychology works because of magic, but also magic works because of psychology, but also all of these other things that we've talked about. And that's what I'm trying to hold with it. So I'll just throw that out there as like food for thought for anyone listening. And it's like, we need to think about what that, like, how do we talk about this thing? But also I think it's important when we're talking about something that so resists definition, to when we use, almost like we were talking about last week with jargon, right? Like really understand what you mean when you're using different terms. That like, it happens all the time where people learn a word and then repeat that word and don't actually know where it came from or what it's trying to speak.
I do that all the time. I'm like, univocal essence of art. That sounds right. I did look it up. It is a word. And it is what I was wanting to say. But like, I know it because like it works in the phrase. Like I know it by context, but I'm like, then I use it and I'm like, wait a minute.
But at least feeling this word holds this concept, right? And like feeling the concept that you're trying to communicate. I think that's like the important part of that battle. So yeah, that's a whole rant about language, I suppose. But No, I was about to ask another question. So what?
Please, no, I was gonna make just.
Yeah. We've reached that point. I was going to say to round out this conversation and kind of tie it back to this concept of art as evocation, with this like budding metaphysics and philosophy of mind that we have going. And
we should write a book.
Hey.
For real.
Yeah. Like actually, yeah.
I think that'd be fun.
I completely agree. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Says the person who's been trying to write a book for like 4 years and hasn't done it yet.
No, hey, you're in good company. Oh, that's so funny.
I'm like, I have all my journals. Just type it up, and basically a book. And I'm like, but typing it that's gonna take so long.
Yeah,
I hate typing.
I know it's the worst.
I'm terrible at it.
But to tile this back into art as evocation and your process with art, I think a nice button is, how does this understanding that you've come to with the like holding apart but also creating this clearing relate to your artistic process?
That's a great question. That's the most important question to ask about any philosophical insight, is like, does this actually have real world import? Does this change the way that I'm living or thinking about the way I'm living?
Yeah.
With the case of the fundamental oppositional force that holds open the clearing for meaning to be,
Oh, how beautiful.
oh, thank you.
No, like,
But
truly, I'm like, that's
thanks.
awesome.
I've been philosophizing very indulgently lately, and nobody's been stopping me. Somebody needs to come stop me for
Hey,
real, because like,
I'm not gonna stop you.
nobody at university's stopping me. I'm just going. I mean, to be fair, this is just like my own, like, for fun, like, but
Yeah.
seriously, somebody stop me, because no, but it may be because the ideas themselves are a little bit too abstract or indulgent, or they're just kind of like new to me. Like, I'm still kind of
Yeah, sure.
like chewing on them, but they haven't really changed my artistic practice very much, and that could also just be because I haven't really been painting that much lately.
Sure.
Not because I'm in like a real artist's block or painting block, but I guess, yeah, I don't know what to paint.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I think, yeah, but I don't know if it really would. I don't know if it would change my artistic practice.
One thing that occurred to me when you were talking about it earlier was also how you describe making a piece sing. And I wonder if that's like a piece of connective tissue between this concept and art,
Oh,
that is
that's a
like
nice way to describe it.
that is like a like is making an art piece sing almost like a runway for um eh, eh, accessing this to be had.
You're gonna have to clarify that part. Accessing the to be had, like
Accessing the fundamental holding apart to create a clearing for meaning
oh,
to be, is that what is accessed, that the frequency of that what is accessed when an art piece sings. I don't know.
maybe. I mean, it does kind of feel like nesting dolls, or like a microcosm of Genesis.
Yeah.
And so it is sort of tapping into that. I think, like if we understand like the poet as like the poet's job is sharing an attunement,
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah.
like, what are they sharing an attunement to? Um, I would think it's the mystery, like, it's the mystery in the sense of like this sort of like weird like cloud of like this oppositional force, or like this sort of like confrontation,
Yeah.
or like schism that sits at the heart of being human, not in like a substantive like dualism, like not a substance dualism sort of way, but at the very least in terms of our lived experience, there's something oppositional there.
Yeah.
Yet we want some feeling of wholeness, whether it's in terms of understanding why we're here and giving some sort of holistic explanation of the purpose and meaning of life, or
Right.
just like a sense of wholeness or unity of self, or, whatever form that takes. I don't know. It's like a microcosm of that sort of
Yeah.
opposition. I don't really know. I have no idea. I have no fully formed answer to that question yet. But
Yeah.
as a way
Well,
to avoid answering the question more thoroughly, I would like to return the question.
fair enough.
Especially like when it comes to like your writing practice and like when you do practice tarot and stuff like that. If there is sort of a guiding thread through those in terms of what you feel you're tapping into.
Yeah. So the hard thing with so I think tarot does feel different in the sense that like I am almost trying to release tension in a practice like that is like I almost want to be the
Like
I'm
a
thinking
window.
almost like in a like mechanical machine, like a steam, like you need like a valve to release steam so that pressure can get out. It's like that's kind of what I envision myself as, that it's like,
That's
oh,
funny.
all of this energy is flowing through and down to communicate something to this person. And as it passes through me, it's going to confront this schism, right? Therefore, my job is to unschism it, to release that tension and let it through.
Okay.
In tarot. Art and writing feels very different because
Yeah.
I'm almost trying to channel it directly into this schism in communication with that core essence of my personal human condition and experience.
Like it's channeling the tension rather than being a channel that like tries to dissipate the tension as much as possible to be like as close to a pure just like medium for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Which is interesting. I was about to say like clear things up versus like complicate things, but then we're also talking about the clearing. So maybe clear is a weird word here to use.
There's too many words.
There's too many words. So there's something in there that maybe
needs more pictures.
Yeah. This book needs more pictures. This is so funny.
I said that the other day in a reading group, like not even joking, and someone turned to me and they're like, "I don't understand why you're saying this." And I was like,
oh,
it just needs more picture. I just think
I'd
it would
like
work
a
in a
picture.
I was being so serious though. I was like, I think some visual diagrams would be useful here.
Hey, so when we write our book, everyone, it's gonna have pictures. So get excited.
And we don't even need to hire an illustrator.
No, we don't. We have an
We can do
artist. We can do this.
A Berlin-based artist.
A Berlin-based artist. But I'll also say, I really like the word that you used, attunement, and there is something about that word that I think taps into the making it sing-ness that also taps into the tension, right? That it's like this dis-ease that you kind of step into, that it's like when you try and tell the story, it will always run away from you, but you're still trying, and it's that frequency of that paradox, of that schism that you're kind of resting within. So attuning to that, I think really is what it is. For me, at least right now. And I love what you said about what are they called? Matryoshka dolls? But the nesting dolls.
The nesting dolls.
There's some Russian word that I'm like, I have been wanting to look up the etymology of, but
really?
Yeah, and I just haven't, but I want to. That is what it feels like.
Dolls?
Matrushka.
Matrushka dolls, maybe.
But yeah, that is kind of what it feels like. Is that I am being like a small little version of this bigger thing that we're talking about in this moment.
Okay. But
Yeah.
maybe, perhaps where you and I differ, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel very strongly that it sort of is tapping into something bigger than me, but also, like, it's less about me chasing it and trying to capture it, and more so trying to, like, pull it out of me. And that's just as difficult as chasing after it and trying to capture it. Is it, like, because that's hard. It's really hard to do sometimes.
I
but
would
maybe
say different days it feels like both of those things to me, in the sense that it's like both pointing at but also pointing towards something. I
yeah.
think, and saying that it's like, if it is this like kind of stock that we're talking about, to go back to your like soupy kind of thing, but there's also that drop of stock within the self. I'm like, I'm
Little
both pulling
soup dumplings.
right, I'm both pulling from the singular soup dumpling that is within me and the like platonic ideal of soup dumplings above, and bringing them together in my stock. That's that. So I would say it's both of those things, but I do think when I talk about it, I often talk about it
for the new age. We're writing it.
Hey,
It's
you're
happening.
welcome. It's happening.
So no, in 100 years, we'll be like, so when Bush and Brown are talking about the soup dumpling, the almost platonic form of the soup dumpling, do we think they're getting at something metaphysical, or are they just playing with language? Like, oh god.
Is this an artistic choice, or are they describing the experience one has when encountering a soup dumpling?
the phenomenology of consuming a soup dumpling, and
if we look at the etymology of dumpling,
we find it takes us back to the root of the word of to haunt.
Actually, if it did, that would be crazy, and we would...
What, dumpling?
Yeah. Or soup. I wonder what the etymology of soup is, too.
Dumpling etymology. Maybe we don't have time for this, but... a dough. Maybe a lump of dough. Oh my god. The AI overview... The name's association with a lump is a clear reflection of the food shape.
Lump! That's so funny.
Oh, I hate AI so much. I'm so mad because Microsoft, I updated my Microsoft Word, and now there's this stupid little Copilot thing in the bottom corner.
I know.
And I'm like,
ugh.
I didn't agree to have this AI slop in the corner of my screen. Like, and it's like, let me know if you need help with it. I'm like, I don't need you to streamline my ideas for me. Just let me write. It doesn't say anything. It's just a stupid little bubble, but yeah. I've stopped using Microsoft Word in boycott until I can figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah. No, I'm
upset about it.
Okay, real quickly, etymology of soup.
Yes.
Liquid food from soup, broth, late Latin suppa, which is bread soaked in broth, Proto-Germanic sup, sub, to take liquid. But then we can also go to like sop, something soaked, if you sop something up, and to sup is to sip, and that's also where we get like supper, right?
And in the same way that we are essentially just soup dumplings of the larger whole, fingertips of God's awareness, we both soak up the broth, and in the artistic act, we also spit out the broth. I don't know. It didn't quite work. I was So
we also have
a
performance art piece that we need to do, where one of us is constantly drinking soup and the other one's constantly spitting soup.
And we'll call it Dwelling at the Heart of Genesis.
Dressed as Paul Klee puppets.
Oh, or soup dumplings.
Or we'll be in little soup dumpling
dressed
costumes.
as puppets, and everyone in the crowd is eating soup dumplings.
Ooh, or we look up. The puppets are being puppeted by soup dumplings.
We're by the platonic form of soup dumpling. I need to draw this. This is too funny.
But they're puppeting
man.
us. The dumplings are puppeting us to eat dumplings.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've reached that point.
Well, everyone, let us know what you think in the comments down below. Another big thank you to Rune Soup, Gordon White of Rune Soup, Phil Ford, J.F. Martel.
Episode.
Yes. Again, that will be linked down below for everyone to go listen to. There's so much in that episode that we did not touch on.
Yeah, I'd be interested to, like, I think it's really fun to do episodes, like, based on, like, a podcast or something like that.
Yeah. So also, if anyone has recommendations for something that they'd like to hear us talk about, let us know. Yeah. Anything else before we close it out?
No, this was a wonderful conversation. Lots of fun thoughts and silly thoughts as well. Yeah.
I love
about
it.
you?
Okay. I don't think so. I drew this in the middle somewhere. And that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. So I'll just leave us with that. Just
wonderful.
Like loops in loops. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. And
thank you.
It's not Tuesday.
No. And it's also thank you.
Hello.
And goodbye.
And
you're welcome.
The Unwritten Aesthetic is a bi-weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that features philosophical artist or artistic philosopher Lauren Bush and question asker and meaning maker Reese Brown. Please subscribe to the Unwritten Aesthetic wherever you may be listening, and if you enjoyed the episode, consider leaving us a like, a 5-star rating, and or a review. And sharing the episode is a really wonderful way to kickstart meaningful conversations in your own life. If you want to stay up to date on all things the Unwritten Aesthetic, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at the Cohere Collective, and check out our other content and offerings at thecoherecollective.com. To explore Lauren's work, head to laurenbushpaints.com and follow her on Instagram and YouTube at laurenbushpaints. If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, head to thecoherecollective.com to explore life coaching options. A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for the Unwritten Aesthetics music, and thank you all for being here today and exploring the Unwritten Aesthetic with us. As always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.